And we're going to have to interrupt you right now and go to that press conference that we told you about earlier with CAIR. Let's listen in.
Everyone, I'm here just to present ourselves, make ourselves available to answer questions about the controversy surrounding the republishing of the cartoons. But before I do that, let me just make a few remarks as a backgrounder for you and for your benefit. The events of the past few days and last week were condemned universally. Especially when I'm talking about the attack on Charlie Hebdo by a few extremists who claim to be Muslims, and they've done what they've done in the name of Islam. That vicious attack was universally condemned by Muslims around the world, individuals, organizations, institutions, and scholars. And that sent a very clear message that Islam as a religion does not condone the taking of innocent lives, or Islam does not condone harming or killing anyone who is offensive to Islam and Muslims. That was made very clear to everyone. And also we appreciate the response by the French government and many governments around the world who called for unity and made sure that this incident, this vicious attack, terrorist attack, will not divide France, will not divide Europe, and will not divide all of us, because the terrorists will win if we start to talk about if we start to talk at each other instead of talking to each other, instead of unifying ourselves against the intent of these terrorists who intended to divide us versus them kind of mindset. I think they will fail if we continue to defend free speech and if we continue to honor human lives and also show respect to one another. Having said that, Charlie Hebdo decided to republish cartoons that are deemed offensive to Muslims worldwide. I think what needs to be done here is we have to show mutual respect. The world is a global village where we're not living under one culture or one mindset. Diversity of opinion, diversity of cultures, diversity of religions is the nature and reality of the world. We have to respect that. We cannot impose our value on any culture. So we believe that, unfortunately, we are dealing with two extremes on both sides. We cannot allow ourselves to be victims to extremists on both sides. And I would like just to emphasize this in a very clear manner, that unfortunately we find ourselves time and again, years after years, in the same position without any progress. That while we defend the right for someone to speak their mind, to draw whatever they want, we are not willing to respect the feelings of almost 2 billion people around the world, 25% or 20% of the world population. We see that there is a serious lack of balance, that our priorities are so messed up as a global community. We want the world only to respect one perspective. Respect is two-way streets. I think the common denominator here is we believe in peaceful coexistence, in mutual respect, and protecting the rights of people to express themselves. And freedom of expression is not alien to Islam. And I challenge anyone to quote any verse from the Quran where it prevents people from speaking up their minds. I know the Quran left and right. I know it inside out. And I've read the Quran many, many times. And I can cite any verse you like. I read the Quran, I understand the Quran. like the overwhelming majority of Muslims who are living today, who know the Quran and understand the Quran, freedom of religion, freedom of speech is a cornerstone in our faith. One verse that is in chapter 2, 256, it says, "Let there be no compulsion in religion." That is a clear statement of freedom of thought, freedom of religion, and also freedom of expression protected under Islamic theology. What we see today is sometimes misinterpretation and misunderstanding of that verse. Also, the Prophet, peace be upon him himself, he was ridiculed. He was insulted during his time when he was in Mecca and when he was in Medina. He never took harmful action against those who abused him. He never commanded any of his companions to take retribution and harm those who ridiculed him. In fact, that he was doing that in obedience to the clear commandments in the Quran, which one says, وَإِذَا خَاطَبَهُمُ الْجَاهِلُونَ قَالُوا سَلَامًا, that when God is describing the believers, that when they are addressed by the ignorance, their response is peace. Another commandment to the Prophet, be patient over what they say to you and about you. But the more important thing is how we respond to insults or perceived insults. The Quran is ordering Muslims that a good deed is not equivalent to a good deed. Repel that which is evil with that which is good. So taking the higher moral ground is critical, is the Islamic commandment, is the Muslim response. And that's why you see the overwhelming majority of the 1.7 billion people around the world, they don't take to the streets. They don't take violence. They don't harm people who say anything negative about Islam. So I can see at the same time now that many voices in the Muslim world express the feeling that they have been offended by the republishing of that. That is a healthy and rightful position to take. But no one is calling to take any harmful action against the magazine. The only ones who do that are the tiny, tiny, tiny few that unfortunately the Western media is focusing on. And here where I say that unfortunately the Western media and many Western politicians are playing into the hands of the extremists. Because I feel that the extremists are setting the agenda. They're just putting all of us in the same position to talk about this instead of talking about other important issues in our lives. And I believe we have been distracted, all of us together, and we are being tested. And the extremists are recruiting more people because they are managing to divide us. They're managing to tell the world, see, the West is against Islam, the West is offensive to Islam, when in fact that is not the case. The case is we have very tiny minority, an underlined tiny minority, that take violent actions against people who disagree with them, including Muslims. In fact, most of the victims of these extremists are not non-Muslims, are Muslims. So you can see that we are facing the same challenge. We are confronted by the same tiny minority. And if this tiny minority manages to put us against one another, then we are really falling in the trap and we are playing their game. Because we allow ourselves to be provoked to talk about this issue, and if we do not agree to disagree, then the terrorists are winning. So I just wanted to give you an overall, what I hope is a balanced perspective on how Muslims deal with mockery, how they feel, and how we should manage this issue moving forward. But also it is very, very important to dispel the myth that unfortunately is predominant, especially in Western media, that Muslims are inherently violent. This is a bigoted view, inaccurate and unfair. And that's why we're here. We are here to dispel stereotypes, misinformation, but also I'm joined by Osama Jamal to answer any question. Osama Jamal is the Secretary General of the U.S. Council of Muslim Organizations. That's the largest umbrella of national Muslim organizations. He happens to be in town. And I feel both our organizations have a clear pulse on the Muslim community, which, as we said, reject violent extremism, reject any tendency towards the use of force and violence to achieve one's goal, no matter how this goal may be legitimate in the eyes of those who call for violence. So if you have any question, comment, please feel free.
You have been listening to a spokesperson with CAIR, that is Nihad Awad. He's the executive director for CAIR, which stands for the Council on American Islamic Relations. It is a civil rights organization based here in Washington. The purpose of this media conference was to offer reaction to the publication today of the Charlie Hebdo magazine in France, that cover generating a lot of controversy today.
Yes, indeed. And Nihad Awad said that he condemns violence and extremism on all sides, that he supports France's call for unity and ultimately supports freedom of speech. So that is the reaction from CAIR today to the publishing of the latest issue of Charlie Hebdo today, showing the Prophet Muhammad on the cover.